Welcome to the Bleeding Edge Report with Chris and Trey, where tech meets its match. Welcome to part 2 of our episode of how to leverage AI for productivity and profit with our special guest, Jason Wells. Thanks for watching and enjoy.
Gains. She sees or their research department sees even more gains from AI and deep learning. And starting from that perspective, I think that that indeed, I believe the productivity gains, we're already seeing it right now. I see, I'll give you an example. I had in one of the software companies that I had built, we built an AI, kind of the early days of conversation analytics. That's what we called it. Had coined the phrase conversation analytics, and we worked with a call center. And you can imagine a call center that has 1,000 seats in their call center. Everybody's on the phone, and you always hear this recording. This call may be recorded for quality and monitoring purposes. Nobody listens to those calls.
Right.
I mean, 1,000-seat call center, 8 hours a day, 8,000 hours of conversations. Actually, they do on a spot check. They go through and they use those, and they can pull them up as records, right? So, but it's not feasible, right? But they still had a team of 10 to 20 people that were still, just for a very small sample, reviewing calls and providing coaching and helping. Well, in that time, we built a model that, first of all, used off-the-shelf transcription engines, which improved dramatically in about around 2018, as we got deep learning models, 2017, 2018. And then it took another leap forward in 2020-ish, in that range, in terms of good quality transcription. But anyways, you could then train a machine to understand what was happening. Did somebody follow the compliance requirements? So you take an industry that has very strict compliance, like maybe it's debt collection, for example, and what you can and can't say about credit reports and things like that. It could find that. It could find that at a 95% accuracy. Now, that saved and took the cost. It took those 10 to 20 people and allowed them to spend more time coaching and helping and leading. So they didn't lose their job, but they lost this function. They didn't have to go and listen to the calls. So anyways, that's another example.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn my light on. I have it set to go off.
Oh.
every 2 hours, it reminds me I need to either stand up or get out of my office.
That's a good one. It's better than an alarm going off and scaring you all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this conversation, to me anyway, is pretty enlightening, because I lived a life of data, right? On my end. And I think back all the years, all the data that was gathered, like this experience of this call center that you're talking about, all the data that's sitting out there that no one thought about gathering, because the question was, what would we do with it once we gathered it, right? And there was no tool that could go through that data very easily, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, you have 10 people, you have basically 10 supervisors, monitoring a call center, and then they listen to some calls and write some notes down, and that's kind of the feedback loop. But then you come along with an engine of some type, let's just, artificial intelligence of some type. And now that changes everything, where, the efficiency and the effectiveness of everything goes up. You think about things like taking calls, or people booking flights, or, sales situations, large sales situations, like car dealerships, and trying to train salespeople at car dealerships that get all these calls. So there's a lot of situations out there, and I think that's what I wouldn't want to use the word scrambling, but it seems like that's what people are kind of looking for. They're looking for these situations that harbor all this data that can actually be used and can be a game changer. And it's almost like you need a team. You need someone to be able to go out and see, okay, does the data you have qualify and can it be used, to something that's actually going to matter, right? And you don't have that expertise inside a lot of these companies, right? You don't have that expertise. So, airlines, car dealerships, anytime there's an interaction with someone, for example, you don't have that expertise that's turning that data in. In other words, there's not a position of, chief AI.
Yeah.
Would that be CAIO or something? You don't
Cal.
have that person in companies. So it seems like something has to change. I mean, it's kind of got to catch up, to where you have the expertise in the organization. My question is, are you seeing companies trying to catch up with that, and how are they doing it?
So most of the energy has been spent in data collection. Again, they think and then out of that has come the data science world, where it says, I've got a lot of data, now let me process it and analyze it for some purpose. What I see is companies that are trying to do that, they just get stuck in this loop of, do I have the right data? Do I have this? And they start to get lost, and they forget about what's the problem I'm trying to solve. So it's almost like the way you even positioned it is, I have a lot of data, what can I do with it? What if I said differently is, what problems do you have? And then do you have data that can help you solve that problem? So again, a lot of times you'll find with startups where they have a technology chasing a problem, but they don't know what the problem is. They just have a technology. This is cool technology. And I think we have the risk of that in AI, and people thinking, oh, AI is the solution. I think in all things, you have to come back to saying, what is the pain? What's my problem? Now that problem could be, man, I'm spending so much on my machine failures. How do I fix that? And that is a, preventive maintenance problem and anomaly detection, and AI could do that. Then you say, do I have the data? What's going to happen is you're going to have this data and this data and this data, because you just get that. But as you get into it, you realize, oh, I need some other pieces. But these three things can get you so far.
Yes.
Now you learn, and then you say, okay, now I know how I need to collect data to solve a problem, instead of just collecting data. So I really encourage people to think about it this way. If you want to approach AI, is you give me a list of your problems or opportunities.
The use case methodology, right?
Start with the use case first. Who is the user? And then if you just stack rank those, which one could, if I solve this, which one would have the most impact to my business? Stack rank it. Okay, you start with that. And I have a hunch that AI or machine learning or data can help me solve this, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And then you go down and you say, all right, then you start saying, I've got data about this problem. I've got this data. What are my data sources? And so now you've got this kind of this map. And then what will typically happen is, or the way I like to think about it is, now let's bring in the machine learning, who's really saying, I'm going to build a model to answer a question or to solve something or to do something. And what happens is, it's like you're making dinner and say, here's my recipe that I think I have, and then, oh, I don't have this, so I need to substitute it for something else. Do you have something else? But it's like, I need this. Okay, I need this. I don't have that, but I could do this. Well, maybe that changes what you're cooking for the night. That's fine. But I like to find on that list, I'll see, maybe I'll get 20 things of use cases. And I'll have this, this, and this, and this. And then somebody said, well, this would be huge if we could solve this. But I'll actually look for the thing, and I'll build this matrix that says what's hard to solve and what's easy.
Right.
Right. So now I have this problem, what's hard to solve, what's easy to solve, and then the data available. And I've got 3 pieces to my recipe. What I'll usually do is I'll say, what about this number 6? I can see that this is easy to do, but it's still number 6 out of your 20. Instead of tackling this big buzz, that you're going to get promoted to the chief operating officer or whatever, like, let's start here, because I see you have some data and it's easy. And when I say easy, I work in the world of applied AI, where I can apply AI, and I'm not inventing something that's brand new. And I would say for most companies, don't invent something unless you're a research organization. And sometimes people have an idea now, and I can tell them, that's hard. And here's why it's hard. So let's go with this number 6, and let's do something, and let's get something out there in 12 weeks that's usable and valuable. Now, it might be clunky, but let's get something that creates value immediately. And then you say, if I just had this much more data, I could actually be a little bit better. Okay, now we have a plan. Or if I could get this from this department, it's here in this database. Now okay, now let's get a plan. And so then I kind of work through that. That's the way I typically like to work. And that's the way I like to think about data. Not, I've got this data, what can I do with it? Instead, hey, what are our problems? What do we need to solve things? Do we need to generate? Do we need to come out with products more quickly? Do we need to do that? What are our problems? And sometimes the answer is, you don't need AI for that. You just need some automation. So anyways, that's how I think about.
That's a really good insight.
Approach.
I think that's what a lot of CIOs are really going to have to take to heart. I mean, because you can imagine these board meetings and these meetings where, this new AI, subject of AI comes up, and, you have 90% of the people in the meeting that aren't really tech savvy. And you have those 1 or 2 folks that there's kind of some pressure on, hey, can we use this new technology to help save money or make money? And then the pressure is on them to go out and find those ways where they can make and save money. And I think what you're talking about is something that CIOs and individuals that are in that decision process really have to take heart of those 2 things. And I heard you say, how difficult is it? How difficult is it? How important is it? And then how big a pain point, is this going to solve? They really have to go through that process. And because we've all seen when companies go through that process and they go into a meeting, think that they're going to get number 6, and their boss goes, no, I want you working on number 1. I don't care if it's the hardest, that's the one that's going to have the biggest impact. And then the CIO, that group is going, well, how do we tell them no? I can't tell them no. Well, we're just gonna have to turn around and start doing it, right? We don't want to get pushed aside. My review's coming up next month. I just bought a condo, up in Deer Valley. I can't do that. So it comes down to, that pressure that really happens in the decision process of these companies. I think what you're talking about is making sure you stand fast.
Yeah, and where I think it starts, I think where the real innovation should be happening is in the business unit, is in the operating areas. And because, well, I say that partly from experience, because they understand the use case. And I have worked with another client, which is a Fortune 100, a very large global company. And about a year and a half ago, before any of this ChatGPT came out, we began working on a project to help them in one specific problem. Very kind of, I need to solve this problem. I need to produce more of this content that goes to, because I have to keep up with the pace of new products that are coming out. And so I have to keep up with the way I communicate about those products. And so they had this little slice for their use case. They built a very purpose-built model that solved just that. Then ChatGPT came out, and now you've got at the corporate level, someone said, we got to do something. We got to do something. Right? This is exactly what you're saying. What do we do? And they were able to raise their hands like, we already do it, and it produces value for us. And so it's like, well, can you do something else? So now you're looking to this, in a business unit, in a particular function, saying, yeah, I can lead the way, I can help, and we can do these things, we can expand the use cases and go out. So rather than spend $1 billion on a project, right, that number one use case, and write it off at some point in time, there's other
Right.
ways to do it. And I have been in those corporate environments where I was a director of product, and just one of those little cogs in the wheel, doing customer requirement documents and
That's
product
right.
requirement documents. And we spent so long, and that whole project after $1 billion was just shut down. And I can't say why exactly. Look, there's a lot of challenges when you're trying to innovate. There are a lot of different ways, and many of these companies, for them to have an impact on their business, they have to go big, right? And so
Yeah.
there are a lot of different use cases.
Yeah. Go big or go home, or go big or not do it. I think.
But it also gives us, or the little guy as well, and anyone, the opportunity, because my understanding is when you're talking to a Microsoft, a Google, and Amazon, if that can't produce that's got to be $1 billion. If it can't be $1 billion business within a few years, it's not really worth them spending time on. And so again, that opens up opportunities for a lot of people in the market. Even if you think somebody else has the lead, when you think about, your customers, your use case, and if it's not being solved out there, just solve it.
That's right.
It doesn't mean anyone, even if somebody else has a head start, you are unique. Your data is unique, your approach is unique, and you can build that into an AI model so that your AI is specifically yours.
Yeah. I think, and it kind of gets back to I think those very targeted situations, and that's going to be critical to kind of, for AI to gain traction. I think to make sure they're really solving something that can be solved and is useful. It takes away the pain. So, yeah.
Hey,
Well,
Jason.
do you have any other questions, Chris?
I did. Jason, we've been discussing this, for a little bit now. And often we're thinking about it in terms of the US technology industry. What about the rest of the world? Are there any leaders amongst us? Any other peers that are competing for AI dominance, like where the US, we assume, is in a leadership position? How do you see that?
Yeah, there is a bit of an arms race in AI. China being really one of the number two, competitors in that space.
Mhm.
And an interesting side note is one of the reasons we got a big burst forward in the late, really in the 90s, and particularly on Wall Street, is because a lot of these statisticians and mathematicians that were in Russia, as the Soviet Union collapsed, they came over to the US and spent a lot of time on the stock market and in Wall Street and building out models there. So you never know what's really going to happen and how those races change. But there is that competition, and I think China does have the benefit of being very direct in their command economy, right?
Yes, top down.
You have the top-down benefit of being able to direct large budgets and controlling that. So there is that benefit. What you lose is the innovation that comes in the from the crowdsourcing of ideas and innovation. So over the years, it's hard to know, but we have seen that innovation does require that some of that freedom, that flexibility, and it's the true test, right? Between those markets, and there is collaboration as well.
So in conjunction with that, right, there is an arms race. I agree with you, and it's not just China. I mean, India, several of the top tier IT countries. With that in mind, we were discussing this last week when Elon Musk and others signed the open letter to pause AI deployment, I guess. And there were, the consideration basically was that it could be used for nefarious reasons, right? Now, if we actually pause development, right, not just deployment, but development, as was specifically in the letter, doesn't that actually close the perceived gap of dominance or early head start? Because that doesn't, just because we say that we want to pause and investigate doesn't mean the rest of the world's going to pause. They'll hit the gas, right?
No, it's absolutely, it's interesting, and I'm not a philosopher, but sometimes humans are not so bad. There are certain individuals, but and maybe this is the wrong analogy, but I gotta step back sometimes and say, well, the US won a certain arms race in World War II with the atom bomb.
Sure.
To my knowledge, and I'm not a historian. We have not used that nefariously after World War II, after dropping 2 bombs. It's a threat deterrent, but you actually don't see a lot of these governments using nuclear weapons in the same way, right?
Sure.
Anyway, so again, plenty of people could argue with me on that. What I think is there is some goodness in humans. But there are individuals that will always take whatever technology you get and use it in nefarious ways.
Mhm.
And I think it depends on where you want to stand. But my opinion is we cannot stop the innovation. You cannot just write a letter. You can't even pull it out, I don't think, in my opinion, legally. To stop people from implementing AI. AI is not new. It's statistical models. It's robotics. It's everything we do. These are all just the buds of AI. So what is it and what isn't it? It's not so simple, right? It's saying, oh well, this is wrong, right? This is AI and this isn't. But these are just statistical models and learning. And I really don't see any way to stop it. And I think that we do have to think through those implications and see how we can help and shape it. And we certainly have done that with other things in our world without ruining innovation and productivity. But I think at this point, it's
that train has left the station.
Train has left the station.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what AI is. And I think that's where, it becomes a little scary for some people because they don't really know what it is. They've never seen it in action. They don't know. They just know a lot of people are talking about it, and they've seen Terminator 2, right? So it scares them a little bit on what's going to happen. But in terms of how it actually is going to benefit, it's almost like they need an AI consortium that has a great PR agency, that's going to tout, the benefits of AI and don't be scared. It's not going to blow up type of thing. But I do think it's because it is misunderstood by even people that are in technology and what it's going to do.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we should talk about this briefly because most people think of science fiction when they think of AI. That's almost everything I've talked about has nothing to do with that world. And that's generally called AGI, right? It's artificial general intelligence, where an intelligence can act on its own. It's generally has built-in intelligence. So all the robots, all the sci-fi is AGI, artificial general intelligence. What 99% of AI today is narrow ANI or narrow artificial intelligence, which is solving a very specific problem. And in fact, models are not very flexible. That being said, ChatGPT has given these first sparks of a very flexible model, right? Because it can do more than one thing. But for the most part, most people will spend their time in AI on very narrow problems.
Yes.
And solve those problems with a computer vision solution, with a, with a natural language model, with a predictive or recommender system. Those are all like, I'm going to solve this problem. So for the most part, like I say, 99.99% of AI deployment is all very purpose-built to help optimize, predict, or generate, right? Is where it is right now.
That's
Really
very
good
interesting.
insight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good insight. That's another level of insight.
An interesting point here is, we've probably seen Zillow and Redfin. So you've seen these models that when somebody gives you, here's your house price, this is what your house is worth, that's AI. It's a statistical model, which is doing what a human would do, who would look at some information and say, based on these comparables, this is how much your home is worth. That's what a human does. So this is a relatively simple math problem, which my master's thesis was actually on predicting the value of light industrial properties.
Oh yeah.
And this is back quite a few years ago, but it was using a combination of regression models, which is the foundation of AI. So I was doing AI in 1994, but nobody called it AI. It was just regression models.
Right.
But my point is, it's been around, and we're using that and interacting with it, and it's been very good for us.
Yeah, I think definitely need some education out there somehow would help things. Yeah. So, well, Jason, that's kind of all the questions we have to throw out. I think it's been very enlightening. It's been a great conversation. We appreciate your input and your wisdom, not just learning, but it sounds, like you got a little wisdom. So we appreciate you passing that along.
Some great insights, really
great insights.
interesting perspective. We appreciate that a lot, Jason. Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
it's fun. I live and breathe it every day. So it's a fun area, and I like to see what can we solve? What can you do with AI? Can you help me solve this? Those are the questions I like to answer.
And it all started with predicting light industrial property prices.
That's what it was. Pretty boring, but actually pretty exciting. Kind of ahead of its day. I should have stayed with that and created Zillow or Redfin.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it very much, and thank you again, Jason Wells.
All right.
And thanks, Chris. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, and look forward to everyone watching any new programs, and please like and subscribe to our channel. If you have a second or two, we'd appreciate it. And that's about it.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And I'm just going to stop the recording now.